back just now. Oh, never mind. It's fine. I see that they're streaming.
It's all right. Yeah. I think we're now live. Well, yes, I think we're live now. We are excited for this episode today. It's another episode of the Blacknificent show, and my name is Thembekile Mtsweni. On today's show, we are celebrating Women's Month. We are commemorating women, but in particular, Omama Bomanyano, Omama Besambat, Omama Bomthandazo. We want to celebrate these women. We want to understand these women, we want to talk about these women and what they represent for us in the Black community. And to have this conversation with me, I have Mmathapelo, Mmadi, and Nobungcwele Mbem. Ladies, greetings. Happy Women's Month. Thank you so much for joining us. Please introduce yourselves and whatever introductory remarks you want to make. Let's start with Nobungcwele.
Okay. Hi to everyone, and thank you so much for the invitation. So I'm quite excited for today, especially because, as you're saying, we are commemorating women. So it's not all the time that we get to have a chance to speak about women, but this is quite an honor. My name is Nobungcwele Mbem. I am a feminist. I identify as a feminist, and I'm quite excited. I am currently in my third year PhD, whereas I'm looking at migration from Makosa to Cape Town. However, within my own honors research project, I did do a report looking at women in the anti-apartheid liberation movement. So I'm quite happy to form part of this conversation after so many years. So yeah, that's
sure.
Me.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction. Welcome, Nobungcwele. Thank you so much for your time today to have this lovely conversation. Mmathapelo, anything you want to say?
Hi everyone, my name is Mmathapelo Mmadi. I am 24 years old. I'm 23, turning 24. I'm a radio presenter in one of the local radio stations in Malahleni FM. I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm a co-founder of Bethany Books and Bethany Media. I'm also a child of God. I grew up in the environment of church. So I think I have been raised by Omama Bomthandazo, Omama Bagcwele. So I think they've played a huge part. Having to celebrate them is actually a very important thing because we see them all the time, going to church, holding cell meetings and all of that. So I'm really excited because I'll be able to share my experience with Omama Bomthandazo as a young girl.
Look, wow, I'm excited already. I'm excited. We're in the presence of great women, beautiful women, but also we are here to talk about great women, beautiful women. Like you said, Nobungcwele, it's not always that we get to sit and speak about women, but in particular, these are women, Omama Bomanyano, Omama Bomthandazo, which are to great extent not spoken about, not remembered, not captured, and their story is not retold. It's like there's no voice. Obviously, they have to also speak for themselves, but we have girls who were raised by these women who also have to speak about them. And I guess that leads me to my first question for this evening, which is, I'm going to direct this question to Mmathapelo, in fact. You say that you've been raised by Omama Bomthandazo. You have been in close proximity to these women that most of us, including myself, only see them on Sundays on the streets, wearing their uniform, going to church in the community, but we don't have the privilege of having been in close proximity with these women. From your experience, who are Omama Bomanyano? Is it an organization? Is it a church? Any membership? Do we sign a form? tell us about the organization of Omama Bomanyano in general terms. What is it?
So I am from the Lutheran church background, and I was raised, in the church. So my great grandmother is one of the first people who attended the church back in the days. I think it was still in the apartheid times. Like, she was also one of the founders of the church, and she was Umama Womthandazo. She used to wear her black and white uniform all the time. And at that time, I was still very young. I did not understand what was happening. But when I grew older, after she passed on, she passed the baton to his daughters, and only two of his daughters continued from where she left off. So two of my grandmothers are actually part of Abomama Bomthandazo in the same church. And sometimes whenever we see them, we just see them as mothers who have reached a particular age, and they have now entered a stage of being called Abomama Besambato. And one thing that I have learned from them is that they are not limited from the four walls of the church, and there's so many things that they are doing in the church and outside of the church. So if I could actually just define them, I would say that Abomama Bomthandazo, Abomama Besambato are more of a benchmark or a guideline for young women in the church. They are more like an example for young women in the church on how a woman must represent themselves, how a woman must carry themselves, and I've seen that in the Lutheran Reformed Church, that Abomama Besambato, they start mentoring young women who are part of the LCM, which is the Lutheran Church movement. So preparing them to carry the baton once they are no more. So I think I would define them as mentors, because they are mentoring young women. They're setting a standard in different churches to say, this is how you need to live as a woman.
Oh, interesting. Thank you so much, Mmathapelo. Mmathapelo says that these women have a baton that they pass from one person to the next generation, and she also says, I note profoundly, that these women are not limited to the four walls of the church or the institution where they function. So it is a stream of womanhood that extends beyond the four walls of the physical geographic church. It is a perspective, it is a narrative, it is an idea of womanhood, as well as Black mothering or motherhood. For you, and from where you were standing, what is Omama Bomanyano? What identifies Omama Bomanyano? What is this idea of Omama Bomanyano?
That's a very difficult question, actually.
It is, hey?
I think Omama Bomanyano, the way in which we kind of recognize them is through the uniform, of course, that that there's different types of isambato that women who are part of the church go through, and stuff like that. So that is how you would identify them physically. However, that kind of uniform has got a lot of representations, because there's a lot of things, teachings and learnings and discipline that goes into moving from one phase to the next, because you have to attend my classes, go for prayers, a lot of stuff. So I think what Omama Bomanyano, that's why I'm like, it's difficult to say go bani, but then to say how then do they give off the baton is that I personally also grew up in a household, whereas it's Methodist though. So my mom and my grandmother also Ngoma Besambato, but then myself personally, I am not that. However, there's certain lessons that I have taken from both of these women by observing how they would be within the community and the organization, and that is like the communal spirit, the fact that as women there's so much that we can achieve together, that we create safe spaces for each other, we organize and mobilize each other in such a way that in such a way that we can actually enrich our own lives and enrich the lives of others within our spaces and our family setups and stuff. So I think there's so many things that go beyond how a person dresses. There's so much that goes beyond even just the uniform. The extent at which the work of these women who organize themselves within this particular paradigm, they reach a lot of stuff. And I think that that's what I take. And I think that's where the baton is, the fact that even if we don't necessarily wear the same uniform, the principles which we have been taught, the principles in which we carry are ones that are representative of the community. They're ones representative of care, kindness, and ubumbana throughout nice times and difficult times alike. So yeah, I think that's best. That's how best I can describe it, particularly because I myself have not gone through the processes. I've only observed women who I highly value being part of this and the things that they've also brought home and taught us.
No, sure, I agree. I don't think that these women have been captured extensively as they should be. I don't think that they're spoken about as much as they should be. In as much as, you know, we speak about Omama Bomanyano from, I'm also not a part of the institution, organization, or group of Omama Bomanyano, but I resonate. It's weird because I'm not even part of the Lutheran church where they are founded, but there's something about them that is very attractive to an ordinary woman, looking at them, observing them in society. What I will say though about them is that in their motherhood, or mama, it seems to go beyond this biological factor, you know, over and above being capable of birthing. Whether or not you are capable of birthing, I think that's not a factor, but these values that you mention are what qualifies you as Omama Bomanyano in these classes that you speak of. What I want to understand though is what was the genesis of this the group of Omama Bomanyano? In what response, or what were they, how do I put it, in the inception of the organization, you know, why Omama Bomanyano? Why not be part of the church? Mmathapelo, do you know what is the history of the origin of these women?
I'm not
the inception there.
Oh, okay. I'm not, especially, okay, one thing that I realized is that there is an organization that is called Omama Bomanyano. I've seen it online. But now when it comes to the Lutheran Church with Abomama Besambato, I think now when they were, the formation was, they wanted to create a platform where women will be able to gather, you know, because if you remember in the olden times, women didn't have much of a space in the church because patriarchy was still more in control. You know, pastors, male pastors were the ones who were handling the services, but women had to create their own form of organization where they could actually come together and pray and somehow play their role as the part of the church, you know. Because now, while I was talking to my grandmother this morning, she said something to me, you know, that whenever it's Women's Month or Mother's Day, that's when, as the women of the cloth, they have the opportunity to be out there, you know, they have the opportunity to handle the programs of the services in the church, you know. But if it's just normal, ordinary days, you know, they don't have those opportunities. So when I look at it from my own perception, is that they were trying to create a space where women could serve in the church, because in the olden days it was very it was a taboo, you know, to see women taking control or handling services in the church.
Oh, that's beautiful. Do you also have the same narrative, Nobungcwele? What was the originating factor for Omama Bomanyano?
Sorry, can you just repeat that question?
I'm saying, do you also do you also agree with Mmathapelo? She says that Omama Bomanyano started as a way of creating a platform for women outside of the bounds of the church, because inside the church, men were the only people allowed to speak, to teach, to run programs, and they had to now create their own group or platform where they can, from which they can operate. Is that also the experience you have with them?
I wouldn't say the experience that I have with them, but I think I do agree with what Mmathapelo is saying, in that obviously we do know how a lot of these spaces are structured. I mean, women consistently have been fighting for space, they've been fighting for representation in different ways. And I guess that within certain institutions, women have also mobilized themselves within parameters and using things that make sense to them. So I think, organizations such as Omama coming together, whereas we can sometimes be critical that, oh no, but then they are now selling out to the patriarchy or whatnot. I don't think it's always necessarily true or accurate, because as women can be anything and whatever it is that they want. And if they want to organize themselves within certain categories, which we might in modern times or in woke days see as backward and stuff, it might not necessarily have been the same perspective, because they were breaking the barriers which were set at that time and within that their own specific context. So I do think that Omama, to a certain extent, do organize themselves or mobilize themselves within such a committee, so that they can also practice certain things such as ukududuzo, tandaza, all of these different things that are also communal in a particular way. So it's very tricky for me to be speaking about, especially the origins of it, because you also have to be aware that these women are also functioning within the limits of what a church is and within the limits of what Christianity entails. So we can't expect that agency to be practiced the same by these women as other women who might identify as atheists or believe in other type of spiritual paradigms. So yeah, I think it's quite important that women have created such spaces for themselves, whether or not maybe they want to transform and be inclusive and things. I mean, that becomes a different chat entirely, but I do agree that there's very limited access to how far and how far women can have influence as being the face of certain things within the church. But we do know that in the background, the person that set up that pulpit may have been a woman. The person that made sure that the seating in the church is organized like this were women. Where the children are set, it's women. So there's so many other back end things that women do and contribute within the church. It's just that not every single contribution is necessarily as obvious as it would be with other instances. So that's like a very long-winded way of saying basically that I think sometimes when we do look at Omama Bomthandazo okanye Omama Bomanyano, we sometimes have to borrow the lens that they themselves operate in or live under, as opposed to wanting to impose our own lens onto them because of what we believe and the principles that we abide by. So yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, so I agree. I feel that totally true. Whenever we speak about Omama Bomanyano, they are very politicized. You said something profound when you said that they themselves operate under the the covering of the institution, which is the church and Christianity and so on and so forth. They're politicized, they're problematized as well. Most of the criticisms that they endure are because of expectations for them to extend beyond their values, their mission, or their function, if I can put it that way. But I want to know from you also, Nobungcwele, from looking at them with the feminist lens, as a young person, but also as a feminist, why, and I'm going to be subjective by saying that they haven't been received by the structures of feminism. Is it because, I'd like to assume, feminism does not have sufficient conceptual tools to understand their way of functioning, because they are women of prayer, they are women who believe in a God who ordained the way that they should be? Or is it because, as they're labeled, or the suffering mother of the nation who prays, who's always in the corner? What is it about these women that makes them not to fit perfectly with the notion of feminism? That's assuming that they don't. You said something also profound when you said that there's an expectation for women to always fit under a homogeneous expression of who they are, this narrow, limited way of expressing yourself, almost always, inhibit women from expressing themselves in different ways. Is that also, why is it that there's this criticism from feminism of Omama Bomanyano?
I think, I wouldn't say there's no space within feminism for Omama Bomanyano, because there is. I mean, somebody like Nomboniso Gasa, who's a favorite of mine when it comes to that specific text. She's got her own problematic things, but then she's one of the people that that brought light to me that being a woman, being who you are, doesn't have to be just linear. There's so many different ways in which you can become, and there is space for that within feminism. It's just that sometimes it can be that we focus sometimes on the loudest noise that we would be seeing on social media and stuff like that, but that loudest noise does not necessarily mean that that is what might be the most dominant or the most accurate version of whatever it is. So within feminism, I think that there's there's definitely a lot of scope. I was reading something from Mail and Guardian, I think it was published 2017, that actually speaks about this topic in a similar way, whereas you just look at the role that these women play within society. So I would say that when you start as a young woman, when you start becoming or coming into yourself, you want to first go up against everything. You're like, yeah, I don't want to clean, I don't want to do this, I don't want to, because you've been subjected in your high school, you knew it was a chore. You're like, if I don't do this and stuff. So the first thing that you do when you start becoming independent or you start wanting to reject all of these things. But as you grow older, you start having a deeper appreciation for the different phases that you will go through as a woman and how you kind of interpret everything that happens. So I think sometimes how I always think of it is that when I was once woke myself, I once looked at certain ideas of nurturing, certain ideas of taking care of others in a certain way, as I would never do that and stuff. But as you get older and as you understand that this does not necessarily mean that it comes at a compromise of me, it's not that caring for others means that I have given up on myself, or I have to have long suffering and all of these things. There's so many different things that can coexist when it comes to the dynamism of a person. So I think that where I understand, how I understand feminism is that as long as if the agency is practiced, it's not to say that there won't be oppressions. It's not to say that you don't realize the various oppressions of the systems that you are existing in, but it is to say that you have got the agency of saying that, okay, this is me, this is my life, I'm taking control of it in such and such ways. And I think feminism allows us to appreciate all the various facets of our lives, from when we are extremely radical and we're about destroying everything, until we grow into understanding the nuanced approaches towards life. So yeah, it's a very, you can nitpick in so many different ways, but I think that the Omama Bomanyano, to me, have always been one of the first examples of feminisms, because I can see so much independence amongst those women, so much agency practice amongst those women, and how a lot of them are actually comfortable and confident in who they are, how they are, and how they actually impact and contribute towards healing societies and communities.
Yes, man, I totally agree as well. I guess another thing from feminist perspective is that if mothering is the only thing that is there to be, then there's something wrong about that institution. If that's all that women in the institution are required to be, and not leaders. And I'm not saying mothering is not being a leader or not taking up other spaces, or, you know, not speaking when you want to, or not dressing a certain way when you want to. I don't know if I'm right, but I guess also that delimiting aspect of it. There's someone I just saw a meme or a tweet, I can't remember what it was, during the beginning of this month, where a woman said, "Oh, welcome to Women's Month." I'm paraphrasing. We're going to be hearing about motherhood the whole month. I don't know who it was, but I understood that, I guess, also from women, they don't want to be, in allowing ourselves to be anything and allowing for heterogeneity in the spectrum of womanhood.
I think we lost her.
Thembi? Yeah, I think, yeah, we lost her.
Is the meeting still on? Yeah, it's still on, because we're still on.
Yes, it is still on. Yeah, I can still see you. So
I can also see you. Okay, so can we guys continue with the convo? Let me try. Mmathapelo, are you still there?
Join us again. Conversation. Let's continue with.
So Mmathapelo, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think about Omama Bomanyano and existing in these spaces? Do you think that they are agents of change, or they just perpetuate what already exists?
You know, I think looking at the way my grandmothers are doing everything, you know, I was just asking her that, what are some of the projects that they're doing? What else are they doing in order to assist, you know, the society? And she was telling me about how they give back to those who are needy, how they visit hospitals, how they visit old age homes, you know, but somehow, yes, they're doing something, but there's still more that they can actually do. You know, looking at the problems that we are having in the society, we are focusing gender-based violence, we are facing femicide, we are facing so many obstacles as women. You know, a lot of women are hooked in drugs, there's a lot of teenage pregnancy, and I think as Omama Bomanyano, they can play a huge role in making a difference in our society, in building our communities. So I think they somehow don't understand the role that they can play, because I believe that they are the most important and powerful organization that exists in every location in South Africa, that exists in every informal settlement. You know, if they could take up space and be in control, and continue and not allow any limitations, because I feel somehow they're limiting themselves when it comes to the four walls of the church. Yes, they are doing something outside of the church, but it's still a limitation. You know, there's more that they could actually do, you know, to address some of the issues that we're facing. Because if now they're saying that they're mentoring young women, you know, the question is, what are some of the topics that they are discussing in their mentorship? You know, what are some of the things that they are saying to these women? And I think if they could utilize, you know, the force that they are, the power that they have, there'll be so much difference that we could actually see in our communities. Because I think a lot of people come to churches, a lot of young women attend churches, you know, you'd find that they are broken, you find that they are facing so many issues, you know, but if those issues are not addressed by the women in the church, that becomes a problem. That really, really becomes a problem. So I think if they could just utilize the platform that they have as women and play their part in the community, I think that will be very powerful.
Okay, I mean, I absolutely agree with you. I think that the impact and how far women go and reach is quite vast. But my question then to what you've said is that not putting too much burden then on women to carry societies continuously? Because here they are saying that we are a group of women. This is what we believe in. This is how we are organizing ourselves. These are the things that we want to do for communities. This is how we want to contribute to society. And now you are adding, don't you think that you as a young person who has got these convictions, who is also a woman, can't mobilize a different type of a group that can be able to address these things so that we don't end up having our Omama to carrying the burdens of everyone and everything with them? So yeah, so that would be my question to you. Don't you think then the expectation is what then would destroy? Because I wouldn't be attracted to that. I'd be scared to join such an organization. I'd be like, so that I can go suffer. But it's not about suffering, is it?
You know, I really agree with what you're saying. I really agree with what you're saying and understand where you're coming from, you know. But, you know, with the perspective that I'm bringing is that I don't want them to go out there now and become social workers and carry the burdens in our communities. All that I'm saying that in their gatherings, you know, let them touch on problems that we're facing in the society. Let them do the little that they can in order they could actually make an impact, you know, in our communities. Because, you know, having to have the conversation with my grandmother, and I was asking her, what are some of, you know, some of the things that you're actually talking about whenever you get as women? And, you know, she'll just tell me and say that, no, we are praying for each other, you know, but all that I want is for them to touch on conversations and topics that could assist women and also young women in the community, not only be limited in the word of God, but also touch on real life problems that women are going through in life.
Thanks. I think Thembekile, you can take over.
Welcome back. Yes, you can welcome me back now.
Welcome
Who's the
back.
host? I'm joking. So thank you so much. I just had a connection problem. Look, I'm so you know, touched by the conversation you're having. And I want to add that I think our disclaimer, which I should have said in the beginning of the video, we're coming with a lot of ignorance about who these women are and what they do. I think it's just this is a start-up conversation. you know, and I hope that even for the viewers at home, it triggers that interest in who these women are and what they do. I don't believe that all they do is sit and pray, you know. I have spoken to, in preparation to the conversation, some of Omama Bomanyano, and we were supposed to have one here in our conversation, but unfortunately circumstances happened. But she was telling me about the work that they do in terms of visiting you, Mmathapelo, you told me that your grandmother they visit home ages, right? They old age homes, and abuse and sexual abuse and, you know, women issues, basically, as far as they stretch within their, you know, domain. So I think there are a lot of things that they do, and they fight in their own way. And I want to ask this question of, because I know even in during the anti-colonial and anti-apartheid struggle, these were some of the women that fought in their own voice, in their own way, for the liberation or the support of the liberation movement. Look, I feel as though the telling of the story of this, the anti-apartheid or anti-colonial struggle, always told from the perspective of, you know, the generalization and neutralization of the stories of Black people, and the gray areas are not told. There's always polarization. It's either or dichotomies. It's binaries that are told, you know, either they're heroes and the other ones were not heroes if they did not engage in the struggle in the way that is popular or known. So Nobungcwele, what do you think have been, what do you think, not think, what do you know of the ways in which these women contributed to the struggle of Black people in apartheid, and also how they continue to contribute in our societies in the post-apartheid era?
Okay, I think women within, like women that organize themselves like this, hold space for each other. So a person can be Omama Bomanyano, but they are also a person, and they have got many different facets to their lives. A person could be a political activist and be Omama Bomanyano. A person can be a teacher and be Omama Bomanyano. A person can be all of these things and still be Omama Bomanyano. So I think how you would see the contributions would be obviously gathering each other through a common, and you guys have got a common goal, and you've got common value systems, and you guys understand each other's outlook of life in a particular way. So you organize each other in that manner, but it does not mean that when you are exiting that space that you necessarily ditch who you are versus who you aren't when you're not wearing it. So I think how I can, and what I was reading earlier in preparation for this is that how Omama Bomtanda, so Omama Bomanyano were described is that they would then obviously gather on Thursdays, because that would be their day off from working in my kitchen and stuff like that, and obviously do prayer sessions, because the thing about prayer sessions is not just about praying, but it's about knowing what is happening broadly within the community that you're living in. So you would know whoever has gotten arrested, and then you start getting a deeper knowledge and appreciation of all of the different injustices that are occurring within your country, within the community that you live in. So, I mean, the contributions may not necessarily, you're not gonna think, who, PAC, ANC, or all of these other political parties that were necessarily active in the movements, but a lot of these women were also scattered in all of these other movements in certain ways. And when they did find each other, and they did meet each other through any other activities, they were holding each other's space. They were now saying that, okay, let's ground each other here. I feel safe, maybe, I don't know, I feel safe around these individuals, and whatever it is that we are going to be doing here is something that I believe it and then with that being said, it means that it will be blessed, and we are going to fight a good fight towards realizing freedom in certain ways. So I think that it's not just about looking at them only within the scope of the church, but thinking that they organize themselves within the church, but when they do go outside, they become their own people that are grounded in the church. And when they need somebody to hold space for them, they go back to these other women who then hold space for them, who pray with them, and then they can refuel and go back and fight for whatever justice or fight for whatever it is that they are, that they believe in. So I think that is one of the ways in which I choose to remember or reimagine what it was like for these women within apartheid or colonial times.
Yeah, no, true. Mmathapelo, I want to know, so as we're speaking about these things that they did or are doing, right? Nobungcwele said earlier that isambatho sabo, their attire and their colors represented something. Do you know what was the representation of their attires, their colors, if each item, what it represented?
Okay, so as I was having the conversation with my grandmother, so I was just asking, we're just talking about the different stages before somebody gets into the phase of being umama womthandazo. So, and as when you look at the Lutheran church, they're wearing black and white. So the church is Lutheran Bapedi church, so they're wearing black and white. So in all the stages, everyone is wearing black and white. Then we get into the LCM stage, which is the Lutheran Church Movement stage, where the young ladies, they are also wearing black and white, but the only thing that is different, it is, I think she called it, it's more like a shawl, ispiga, they call it ispiga. So it's black, ne? But for older women, ispiga sakhona simhlophe, and when you look at the colors of the Lutheran Reformed Church, the black and white, she told me that the white represented peace. Yeah, she told me that the white represented peace, and the color black also represented a particular phase in one's person's life, but I could not get a clear understanding of the colors, but I remember she told me that the white represented peace. That's the reason why you find the mothers wearing a white shawl instead of the black one. But those are some of the main colors of the Lutheran Church. And when you look at isambatho, there's something that she also emphasized on, the conduct. How do you carry yourself wearing isambatho? How do you dress when wearing isambatho? They're not putting in earrings when they're wearing isambatho. So I think those are some of the things that I've seen, is that they respect isambatho. So they are black and white colors. They're representing the life of a human being. The white stands for peace, and black stands for a particular time in the life of a person. But I wish that she was here so that she could just give us the clear understanding of the two colors.
No, that's the only problem. We're not having these women to explain. But is that the same representation, Nobungcwele, that I think that, because you speak of a Lutheran church, Mmathapelo, and
yes.
Nobungcwele, you speaking of Weseli, right?
Hmm.
Or are you? Yeah. So Weseli, is that the same attire that they wore?
No, not really. But I mean, I don't know what the colors represent, but I just know that omama banxiba iblouse ebomvu with the white is piercing simhlophe. I think you would have seen Monchu black. She painted that nice Beautiful. So that, yeah, that painting even of Uwini and Sambato, so that would be Omama in Ewisile. And then in Tombi, they wear the inverse. So white blouse, Netiga is bomvu, and then obviously then there's the gilders, which are the youths and stuff like that. So the two ones and Zazios in Tombi no Mama, they just wear inverse colors, but those are the colors that we've seen. What they mean,
you don't know. Someone told me that it means that the black is you were blind.
Yeah, that is the stage that you were talking about.
Yeah,
I could get that.
The black is you were blind. The red is, but through the blood. The white is now you can see. Something of that sort. I'm not sure. Yeah, now you can see. You were blind, now you can see. So ladies, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. Again, this is not exhaustive conversation of who they are. And this is completely subjective to the experiences of the people we're having in this conversation. But the purpose of this conversation is to just ignite an interest to Omama Bomanyano, Omama Mthandazo, Omama Besambato, who they are. I mean, there's no city that you can go through in this country and you don't come across them on a Sunday morning going to church. They sing all together. But in conclusion, I want to know, as we wrap up, from each of you, because I feel as history is retold, these women are erased from history. How do you think that we can continue to remember or Mama Bomthandazo? How can we instill a way of seeing women that captures the narrative of also women who are women of prayer? And yeah, let's start with Mmathapelo shortly, and then Nobungcwele.
I think the platform like this is actually the beginning of celebrating these women. You know, I think the first thing is to get to have more clear understanding with them. You know, I know for sure that anybody knows somebody who is Umama Wesambata. So one of the most important things that we need to do is that let's sit down with this woman, let's engage with this woman, because I know for sure that there's so much that we can learn from them as young women. So let's have interest in learning from them. So I'm truly appreciating this platform, since I see it as the beginning of making sure that this beautiful, amazing, strong woman, they don't go without being recognized in history. So I think the best way is to engage with this woman, learn a lot from this woman.
Nobungcwele?
I think, you know, there's many different ways in which they get captured in our society. And I think, like, I don't think that their voice is necessarily erased or muted that much. It's just a matter of paying attention, or maybe even observing what it is that has been put out there. So I think, just to echo Mmathapelo, is the mentorship. We know they are there. We've seen them, like what you were saying earlier. We see them every Sunday, even not always or on Sundays only. We see them emingcwabeni, we see them emtshatweni, we see them during tough times, during happy times and stuff. It's just now perhaps a matter of mentoring even women outside who are not necessarily interested in joining the structures in a certain ways. But I think that maybe the more we speak about these women and the deeds that they do, the better. Because I mean, I found one article online which was speaking about this while I wanted to prepare for this conversation. So perhaps maybe writing more, but I think there's many ways in which through visual literature, they've really pulled through in bringing the essence and bringing the impact of Omama Besambato to the fore. And yeah, so that's my take on that one.
All right, thank you so much, ladies, for having this conversation with me. It's been such a lovely conversation, knowing what you think about them. And, you know, both of you have been raised by directly or indirectly by Omama Besambato. And I think in one way or the other, you continue to also carry that tradition of values of Omama Besambato on. And to people who are viewing at home, greet Omama and, you know, ask them who they are and what they're doing, learn about them, speak about them in spaces where you get platforms and opportunities to do so. From me, Thembekile Mtsweni, it was lovely being with you tonight. Until next time, goodbye. Thank you.